Okay, it's time to call the meeting to order. Adam, would you call a roll call, please?
Certainly. Councilman Brenny.
Here.
Councilman Frohart.
Here.
Councilman Frederick.
Here.
Councilman Hanson.
Here.
Councilman Johnson.
Okay.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody this evening. Thank you for being here. Please feel free to make any comments as they're on the items on the agenda. And also there's item number 4, which you can make questions or ask questions or make comments on anything that is not on the agenda. And with that, we will move forward with consent of agenda. Number 2, A, approval of agenda, B, approval of the minutes of the May 23rd, 2011 council meeting, and C, claims. Do you have any questions or conversation about A, B, or C?
So moved to approve A, B, and C.
Is there a second?
Second.
Adam, call for a vote.
Councilman Brenny.
Yes.
Councilman Frederick.
Yes.
Councilman Frohart.
Yes.
Councilman Hanson.
Thank you. Item number 3 is projects. A is wastewater treatment plant project. Number 1 under that is consideration of approving the drawdown number 17 of the CDBG funds in the amount of $10,834, and that description is in your notes. Any questions about that?
So moved to approve. Second.
Call for a vote.
Councilman Brenny.
Yes.
Councilman Frederick.
Yes.
Councilman Frohart.
Yes.
Councilman Hanson.
Yes.
Item number 2 under wastewater treatment plant is consideration of approving drawdown number 16 of the SRF loan money in the amount of $113,693.90.
Also move to approve number 2, consideration of approving drawdown number 16 SRF loan money in the amount of $113,693.90.
And
90 cents, excuse me.
Second.
Call for a vote.
Councilman Brenny.
Yes.
Councilman Frederick.
Yes.
Councilman Frohart.
Yes.
Councilman Hanson. Yes.
Number 3 is consideration of approving Snyder and Associates bill in the amount of $12,691.30 for engineering services. Any questions about that?
So moved to approve Snyder Associates bill of $12,691.30.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call for a vote.
Councilman Brenny.
Yes.
Councilman Frederick.
Yes.
Councilman Frohart.
Yes.
Councilman Hanson. Yes.
Item number 4 is consideration of approving Erickson's construction bill in the amount of $111,836.60. Any questions around that?
Also move to approve number 4, consideration of approving Erickson's construction's bill in the amount of $111,836.60.
Second.
Call for a vote.
Councilman Brenny.
Yes.
Councilman Frederick.
Yes.
Councilman Frohart.
Yes.
Councilman Hanson.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Item number 4 is citizens' opportunity to address the council on items not on the agenda. If there is nothing, we will move on to item number 5, which is license and permits. And under that is A, Sac City Bowling Center Class C, liquor license with outdoor service and Sunday sales. John's not here to ask, but in speaking with him, he's not had any problems.
I talked to him earlier.
Council, do you have any problems? Any questions about that?
So moved to approve Class C beer permit.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call for a vote.
Councilman Brenny.
Yes.
Councilman Frederick.
Yes.
Councilman Frohart.
Yes.
Councilman Hanson.
Yes.
Item number 6, miscellaneous. A, consideration of approving Bobby Wells' application for a noise pollution permit. And that was in your packet. It has to do with a ban for a wedding.
So moved to approve
What are you?
noise pollution permit for Bobby Wells. Second.
Call for a vote.
Councilman Brenny.
Yes.
Councilman Frederick.
Yes.
Councilman Frohart.
Yes.
Councilman Hanson.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Under 6B, interviews with engineering firms for the street improvement project. Each one will have 15 minutes to present. We'll take time for questions and answers, and there will be time allowed in between for setup for the next group. And the first group is Keel and Pear. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to get right to it.
Go ahead.
First of all, I want to introduce ourselves. We're with Keel and Pear Engineering. This is Kent Rohde, and I'm Kurt Wiseman. We both are currently in the Algona office. But one thing I want to emphasize, we are a local firm. We have an office presence in here. We have a number of employees that, as far as the project team, we intend to utilize on this project. All of the survey will come from out of this office here in town. All of the inspection, I don't know if you know Ted Zimmerman. He's had a recent illness, but I think he's recuperating pretty good. We're looking at him doing the inspection. The drafting, we're looking at coming out of the Sac City office with residents here in town. We will handle the design and oversee the project. So, one thing we wanted to do, when we gave you our qualifications, we did a little bit there, and we saw you guys had a list of about 10 projects you wanted to look at. We had put together some estimated costs, and we wanted to go through just a quick little exercise here. We did it with Adam and Bob when we stopped in last week. Excuse me. Sorry about that, Geller. Take maybe a couple minutes, and I guess what we'd like you to do is just put down what you think is the priority for the project. Just your own personal things. It's not just whatever flips in your mind. Why I think this project should be number one, and just number it 1 through 10 real quickly. And we're going to try to summarize it real quickly too, and just kind of see how it shakes out. The reason we're looking at doing that is just talking with Adam in the past, and I know nothing's set in stone, but we've been kind of looking at about $1.5 million project. That's roughly kind of the guidelines we started with right now. That can go up or down just depending on a lot of things. When we went through the estimated costs, you can kind of see we're roughly at the street project at about 1.8. We also understand the utilities may or may not be done. That needs to be investigated and a decision to be made down the road. But if we were to do a lot of stuff on there that we had listed, it would be about $1.1 million. I guess with the priorities, going through it all, we kind of want to see which are the main ones. And if we do stick with the 1.5, obviously we're going to have to cut a couple of these out, and that'll help drop them out to the scale. Now this is all just preliminary to kind of get us going in here. I guess what we're trying to do is just move forward on the project here. Rather than talking about ourselves and what we've done in the past, I think that's been presented. And we've made it to the final shakeout, I guess, so I think we're fully capable of doing this project. You're kind of going through that. And also one other thing, I don't know if you're interested or not, but if you want to put your email on there, if you don't, that's fine too. I thought maybe I'd just email the summary to you later on this evening when we got it done. One thing with this project that we're talking about, I guess, did we want to pass those out? I'll take a look at that a little bit too.
We put together some drawings on aerial photos of what we have so far to determine those costs that you're looking at from. An example is Gishwiller on the first page shows where exactly we're going. This gives an overview of the whole project and what streets are involved. These sheets here will give more details as to what and how the extent of the work that we're planning on doing at this time. Again, this is just preliminary. Gives you an idea of how those numbers and cost estimates on your sheet in front of you were obtained.
You have an extra one of those?
Sorry, I meant to have you all do that.
The way we're trying to approach this project is, our understanding, this is one of the largest street projects we've done in quite a number of years. Really haven't done a lot of street projects over the years. There has been some, I think some on South 5th and South 16th, but nothing real dramatic. And I think we're looking at a big project, so the way we're looking at it is, you're going to need a number of public meetings to go through the project and see how it's going to affect the property owners, to decide exactly what we're going to do. If if you're proposing to go through an assessment process, that can be controversial, and there's going to be a number of meetings to discuss that and how to make sure you go through all the proper steps. We're kind of looking at this opportunity tonight to be our first public, although it's not a public meeting, it is with the decision makers of the council. And so that's kind of how we're approaching it right now. There's going to be a number of meetings. I think some of the concerns that may come up that people are going to look at is, particularly in some of these streets along Platt and Bowery, when the work is going on, how are those property owners going to be able to get to their homes? You can look at access, whether alleyways are available, or whether we can use staged construction, or whether we need to make some temporary facilities to allow them to get to their home. That's going to be one big important thing. Again, along with the assessment, of course, there's going to be questions on property values, because you have to establish the values to determine how much you can assess. We're going to have to go through what are we going to assess. We're going to assess the whole street construction. We're going to assess half of it. We're going to assess curb and gutter. I think you guys have done that historically in the past, from what I understand. Those are a lot of things we're going to have to do with these public meetings. You guys had a chance to kind of go through those.
You know, there's a lot of talk about this green type of
Sustainable infrastructure?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk, and to be quite frank here, I don't know that there's a lot of opportunities for that to occur on this project. Those types of things you're talking about are permeable pavement, for one example. Recycled pavements are another example. Use of warm mix asphalt, use of, it's a fairly new type of asphalt that uses less energy. The asphalt, when it is placed, is not as hot as it was normally. Therefore, it doesn't put off as many volatiles, as many gases during transport and during placement. There's a number of things we can do with stormwater that are probably more pertinent to this project. More extreme things are the rain gardens, bioretention swales. Those I don't think would fit very well here. There are some things that we've used in the past called snouts. They're cover over the outlet of an intake, or there's a cover over the outlet pipe, either in a manhole or an intake, that forces the water to go down and up before it outlets into the pipe. Therefore, the floatables, the stuff, the pop cans, the trash and stuff stays on top. In conjunction with that, you put a sump in the bottom of the well, which is anywhere from 2 or more feet. That'll collect the sediments of the stuff that will settle out, mostly the larger stuff. Very reasonably priced opportunities for using your
I think that's what I was.
Infrastructure, stormwater stuff that you need to talk.
Right,
There are more extravagant structures, more expensive structures that would typically be placed down at an outlet to the stream. But they incorporate swirls and the centrifugal force to take out the finer particles. Those can get kind of expensive.
Since we were going through the project, and that's what they all talk about these days, I thought as long as if we had opportunities to do those types of things, we should look at taking advantage of it.
There is some opportunities. They're going to have to be looked at and discussed, because cost is going to come into play, and then a decision is going to be made whether you want to go forward with that. One thing we looked at, we worked a little bit with Laura Zimmerman up at the Chamber of Commerce on those bump outs up at North 5th Street. If it's green or not, there's going to be something green in there. But it's more aesthetics, I guess. But we saw that as a possibility that you could do along State Street along the courthouse. I mean, there's the one bump out on the one corner there that's got a couple benches and a couple trees in there. We saw an opportunity maybe to do several more on that street, and kind of in conjunction with the look down there. Green, if there's some planters in there, I guess you could call that. That might, I mean, realistically, we're not building new, we're replacing existing. It's going to be tougher to find green opportunities. They are there. There are things that can be done. Funding for that is going to be very difficult. There's some opportunities there, competitive, and they're not high dollar.
Talking about funding, in this project, do you see any opportunities for any kind of grants, or is that pretty much?
Ken and I have talked about that quite a bit in the past couple of days. And I guess the reality is, CDBG, there's a possibility for grants there. Realistically, I'd say it's very low. There's other street, DOT funds a number of different programs for streets and that. I don't think any of these are going to qualify.
Typically on Farm to Market.
Farm to Market Road or economic development where you use RISE money, you're looking to develop an industrial park or something to that effect. I don't think that's going to play here. Realistically, your grant opportunities are very, very low.
There are some low interest loans through the Stormwater Quality Loan Fund that may apply if we decide to do the snout structures or the stormwater structures we talked about just a little bit ago. But again, those are not grants, those are low interest loans, and the interest rates are relatively low anyhow, so the advantages to that are small, I guess.
I guess the biggest thing that I want to encourage you to think about is, again, we are a local firm. Again, that's not our advantage, our only advantage. That is a big advantage, though. And for one reason I'll state that is because most of the work is going to come from local people. When we do the things that we need to do through the project, for the survey, the inspection, the staking, all that, it's going to all come from here. So there's going to be no travel costs. There's going to be no time for travel and no mileage. And we've also talked about this too. We are emphasizing that we're a local firm, even though we're an hour and a half away. We have said that when we come here, we will not charge for travel time or for mileage and expenses to get here. We want to show that we are a local firm. We are committed to this town. We want to be here and we want to be a part of Sac City's project. And this looks like a very important project to be a part of.
In the past, have you had any problems with special assessments and handling them?
Really not. I mean, as far as going through the process,
Yes.
what we do,
Yes.
it's really not a problem. It's a big process you go through.
Right.
Really what it gets down to is the controversy between the council and the citizens and deciding how you are going to assess. I have not. Ken has worked on several projects recently where he's taken it all the way through to the final assessment, and the city's dropped it. It became too controversial, and they decided they wanted to go around.
But you do represent us in these special
Definitely.
Certainly, yes.
Definitely.
representation.
Definitely, yes.
We will determine all the impacted properties. We will do all the research at the courthouse, which is a lot easier now than it has been ever before. So those costs are going to be reduced from what they have been in the past. Determine the property owners, determine what their assessed value is, and put together all of the preliminary schedules that need to be done. We will put together the plats. And then you guys will take a look at the assessed values and determine is that fair or not. Sometimes assessed value for tax purposes isn't always the value of the property. And there's some considerations to whether you can only assess up to, was it X percent of the value?
25% of the property's value. The rest is
Assessed value?
No, of whatever value we put in there, we will use an assessed value from the courthouse as a starting point. You guys have the discretion to go back and change what that value is in the property.
So if the assessed value is, say, 100,000, we can go and say it's worth 150?
If
Yes.
you have reasons to do that, yes.
Yes. You better have a good justification for doing that, because that property owner may be sitting here and saying, it's not worth 150, how can you tell me? More than likely, it's assessed at 100, you may reduce it to 80 or something.
Do you have a lot of experience doing a combination assessed bond situation?
Yes, that's the way that most of them are funded. Yes.
Partial, partial?
Yes. Freetown does a little bit different. Emmitsburg, they've got a specific formula that they use.
Well,
I can't remember the dimensions, but they assess.
They only assess like 5 feet of the parking area, all of the curbing guttering, and it's streets infrastructure below that, such as the sub-base, the subgrade preparation, different things like that.
And the street itself?
Yes. And of course, you can assess the engineering, the publication costs, administrative costs, that all go with the project too, so.
Is Emmitsburg's formula, is that something worth looking at, do you think?
I think we could definitely use that as a starting point.
You guys have a history, I think, of assessments. I think the first one to look at that. See
Yeah,
what
see
you've
what
done in
you've
the
done in the
past. To be fair to future people now and future. So we're doing something similar.
I noticed in your proposal that you had a number of different street projects that you've worked on. What are the, say, the last 2 or 3 most recent ones?
Fort Dodge has been probably our most recent. We did a 13-block street, complete reconstruction in an area just west of 15th Street on Airport Road, as you come in from the north, between 8th, 9th, and 10th.
You said that's just at the point of being finalized.
Just
now.
waiting for the seating to get, grab a hold here, and then we'll go all that. We're also doing another one in the design right now too, for Fort Dodge. The numerous others in northwest Iowa here, Algona, Emmitsburg, Spirit Lake, Alta, Newell, Aurelia.
You're doing that one in Storm Lake, aren't you?
Yeah. Lake Avenue.
Lake Avenue's the main one that just finished building it here not too long ago. And then there's a subdivision up in the north part of town near our office that they're also doing those.
You're not doing the main one through Fort Dodge, are you?
No,
Oh.
not Fifth Avenue is.
Main drag, Fifth Street.
Based upon what you believe we would need to do, what your recommendations for these streets would be, do you see anything wrong with the timeline of completing this project before the end of the season next year?
I see.
No, I think you're starting well ahead of the game, and all the preliminary stuff, all the assessment, which is going to definitely take time and meetings, and all the meetings we need to have up front. I can see the design going through the end of summer and into the fall, prepared to go to bids, hopefully, first part of the year.
We're going to want to involve the public very intimately in this project. They want to feel like they're a part of this project. I just think right off the bat, we're going to want to involve them in the public information and get their input. Such as, you know, if there's any handicapped people involved on any of these streets, they have special needs, that we're going to have to account for. Again, Kurt talked about the access.
Bob, do you have a copy of this too?
Bob has filled out.
Yeah, we done that the other day.
Yeah.
I can enter those in.
How confident are you in those estimates? I mean,
Good preliminary.
do you
I'd say we feel fairly comfortable with them. I
do you
mean,
tend to estimate low, or do you tend to estimate
we're
worst
going to
case
estimate
scenario?
high, not high, but we don't want to estimate low. They had them last, but we got a theory about estimates. When you get down to it, okay, say we're doing a street project from here to here, it's going to cost what it's going to cost.
Yeah.
The contractor is going to tell us what it's going to cost. If I come in and say this costs, costs $100, and I come in and say it's going to cost $80, and you guys are prepared for $80, you have your budget set up for $80, everything is ready to go, and it comes in at $100, everybody's upset, pissed off. If I tell you it's going to be $120 and it comes in at $100, we've got the money for $120. We're set up and it comes in at $120, everybody's feeling good. But the reality is, based on the improvements that we design and make recommendations, it's going to cost what it's going to cost. And it depends, timing of bidding and all of that, and markets and the economy and all that. That all factors into there, there's no doubt about it.
And Bob, you're pretty comfortable with those streets as being the highest priorities, those 10?
You guys have gone through a process to get to these 10, haven't you? I don't know, we didn't go into any detail in here, at least talking about it, but there's a few things that we took into account. Number one was Elm Avenue. In our cost in there, I think, we have $80,000 or something like that. We were just looking at the intersection. We did not put the cost for the whole thing, and we made some assumptions. Now, these are things we would need to talk about in the future, but we more or less went, the assumption is it's going to cost you a huge chunk of money because that street is not in very good shape. We assumed that way back when it was designed and built, there was poor subgrade, no drainage away, and that's why you see all the cracks and the sinking and everything else going on. The intersection definitely is horrible and needs to be taken care of, but we looked at it as a little bit lower priority. No offense to the people who live there, but it probably sees very little traffic other than most people. Versus 9th Street or Leonard, where I think you're going to see a lot more traffic on some of these other streets. So I personally put that a low priority. I'm interested in seeing what you guys see on it. When I went through it, I looked at it, I looked at it as streets that get the most use. I put 9th Street as a priority. I saw that as fairly high. Just the condition of these streets in here alone, I put those as another higher priority. State Street I put up there too. This is me. Because it's courthouse, downtown, the public's on it all the time. The street looks like it has very poor drainage. I saw that as a much higher priority. Park Street, when I looked at that, what we were talking about doing to it, we looked at it right out there on the curve, right over here. Pretty bad piece. It looks like it probably needs to have full depth patch replaced. We looked at a couple intakes, looked pretty bad. The rest of it is more of a maintenance issue. I mean, we put dollars in here, and it can definitely be put into the project, but it can also be taken care of on the maintenance side of things. So I personally put that as a lower priority. Gishwiller down here, that first block we put is obviously in fairly poor shape. I put it lower priority. I think some other people put it higher priority. I looked at it as, well, there's other access around here. Once you go past there, if you go all the way out to here, well, there's one house in the Armory. Where do you want to spend the money? I guess is kind of what it was. So those are some of the issues that I thought of as I was looking through this.
Does courthouse, do they pay assessment to?
Yes.
If you go on Park Avenue, that would be basically us mostly. We're doing, us careful to doing all that.
And Park is just mainly some small repairs or
Small repairs in the drains.
yeah. I've got South 9th comes out as first, Leonard is second, third would be Platte, fourth South 8th, fifth is South 6th, sixth is West State, seventh is Elm, 8th is Bowery, 9th is Gishwiller, and 10th is Park.
Not exactly what I kind of threw out there, but still kind of close. Just kind of consensus around it, and that doesn't mean that's the consensus of the public or anything either. But 9th Street seemed to be the priority. Leonard, Platte Street through here. Here we go, 8th Street. I think when we talked with Adam, he was talking about maybe just bringing it up around the corner and I guess cut it off. Again, we took some liberty and looked at it and said, well, where do you cut it? We took it all the way up to Audubon, and our cost estimates reflect that.
There's still a number of options, different things you can do here. This is just a preliminary, depends on what you're looking at and when you're doing the evaluation, which, when you're looking at just what the quality of the street is now. Gishwiller is probably one of the lowest quality streets, but yet it's probably one of the least traveled down there. Just a short section. Park and Elm, Elm is going to take a lot of money to replace that. You want to spend all your money up there.
Park and Elm.
Elm
Elm
is
is
7.
Elm is 7, Park is 10, so there's not a lot of work that needs to be done to Park.
What, when you did this, just a general question here, then looking at cost versus, say the sub-base is just all gone, but it's a low traffic area. How that sub-base would use that as,
Usually use
asphalt over it, or
usually use either a granular sub-base of some type. first you start with your subgrade. We'll do a special compaction of your subgrade. Next is your
Dirt.
Next over that is a granular subbase, either crushed concrete or the crushed stone. And above that would be your pavement structure. And also, as part of, I found it very helpful to drain that subgrade, put in subdrains on each side of the street. You can keep your subgrade dry, you can keep the frost heave out of it, your pavement will last for many, many more years. Right? I'm very, very big believer in subdrains, which is a small pipe on each side of the, perforated pipe on each side of the pavement. That also gives the, I don't know how many sump pumps are in town, it gives the opportunity for the residents to hook into the subdrain to get their pipe that they may be pumping over the curb and making for a wet curb throughout a large portion of the year.
Or into the sanitary where they're not supposed to be. Get any of that, yeah.
Okay, what about asphalt overlay? You know, do you do a lot of that, or
Yes,
do you rather tear it down like you're saying?
that's done a lot, but I see a lot of the streets here are beyond, I mean, you've been doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's been done, and it's at the point now, those cracks show up within the first year, if not sooner, that are underneath there. And they have to be dealt with. They become wider, and you have the pavement doctor coming in town and fill those cracks. And, asphalt's yearly maintenance.
We found an old set of plans from 1979 that Otto and Culver had done. Up here, you did, oh geez, 25, 30 blocks of all overlays. And I hope that
Leonard was one of them.
yeah, it's along 9th Street.
Yeah.
There was a number of these in here. And overlays, if you get 20 years, you're doing great. You guys got 32 years on those overlays already. How good were they the past 10 or 15 years? I don't know.
I was just curious.
Yeah, I guess those are some things we'll need to discuss. If we want to do all these projects and still stay within the budget, maybe we can select a few of these to do overlays with versus completely tearing them up. But we would be definitely looking at adding subdrains on either side of it.
Well, I was just, for low traffic areas where you're not gonna get much, you know, I was just looking at, you know, cost, and, you know, is it cheaper?
It is cheaper, it saves some costs.
But what you will do is, when we pick the streets, you'll give us both your recommendations both ways.
We can give you recommendations and we give you cost estimates in both ways.
Yeah.
And you can make your choice. And we don't get upset if you don't necessarily follow our recommendations.
Well, I was just suggesting, you know, where there's very little traffic. You know, it's just cars, maybe a few pickups like up there, you know, or just...
Which one are you thinking, like Elm Avenue here?
Yeah, you know, just certain areas like that, you know, where you're not gonna get semi-traffic.
The problem with doing an overlay on Elm, they have a poor subgrade now. It's moving. So, the asphalt overlay over
That's
that,
not gonna do you any good.
Well, John, those cracks will radiate right through within
you're
here.
going to be throwing good money after bad. On some of the other streets, again, they aren't. They have a better subgrade. So we have to, again, look at that on a street-by-street basis and see what the traffic is.
Because I remember when they did out by the farm there on 150, they came in with it was concrete. They came in with a pounder and broke it up, and then they poured asphalt with the concrete.
And use that as their subgrade.
Yes, that's what I would guess what I was getting at.
It doesn't work very well in town usually because large machines like that can do damage to a lot of the other infrastructure in town. It's not done.
I'd be concerned about your water main underneath your street. It's a possibility, and I'm not discounting it, but I'd be concerned about that and the neighbors' houses getting...
But, and I realize it's a whole different issue out there because of the 15.
Is it time?
You know, it's,
Any further questions?
Is there any obvious question that we haven't asked?
I have one more on my list. It's
Okay,
also a
sure.
question. Other commitments that your engineering firm has, do you foresee any complications or obstacles as far as your main staff being available when necessary for this project?
I'm going to answer no without giving you a quick answer. We're committed to this project. We have the staff to do it. We definitely have work on our books. I would say at this point in time, our ag drainage workload is very high. Our municipal work is at about an average level. We definitely have more than enough capacity to pick this project up and give you full attention that you deserve.
Okay.
I like to conclude by saying we would definitely love to work with you. We'd like to be the engineer for this project. We definitely want to be a stronger part of the community and be a part of that's it.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks very much for inviting us.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
You're in there. It's a one night, but it's done. You guys have this projected, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Nice to meet you guys. Back. Nice to meet you. See ya. See ya.
Black.
Well, where are we not gonna trip over it?
One right back
We'll
here.
go back that way.
Here, that would be better, maybe.
Battery, 97%. Let's put this cold away.
I want this where we want.
You make your decision. Commissioner decision.
What's that? Yeah, I can order the results if it works. Focus wheel right here.
Yeah, I don't know. No, I feel I was like 100%. Absolutely.
I don't know.
Still kind of thinking.
Is it loaded?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
We'll just make sure we got.
Man pointed at this. Just tell me when you gentlemen are ready to begin and I'll start your timer.
Fire away, I guess.
Are we ready?
Ready.
Gotta move over to this side?
Oh, that's good, Anna. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right.
Absolutely.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City staff. We appreciate it and appreciate the opportunity to visit with you tonight and interview with you for this project. Go ahead and do the first slide. Introduction tonight. Doesn't like me. There we go. Al Munsterman, I'll be the principal in charge. I'm out of the Ankeny office. With me this evening is Tim Tide, who's our Western Iowa Regional Manager out of Atlantic. And then Dave Sturm, who will be our project manager, again out of the Atlantic office. Who we are, we thought we'd give you a little general outline of who we are. We're engineers and planners. We have roughly 200 people. We're engineers, planners, landscape architects, land surveyors, technicians, environmental scientists, technical CAD people, related drafting and design folks, and also administrative personnel. What we do: municipal engineering, traffic and transportation, land development, stormwater management, structural engineering, environmental services, and of course water and wastewater. Not the least, it just happens to be the end of the, put that at the end of the slide, in which we're doing the project with you folks now. This is where we are. We have multiple offices. We have regional offices. We've located our offices closer to our clients, closer to our work, and we have offices in Madison, Wisconsin, of course in Iowa, Cedar Rapids, Des Moines, Ankeny, Atlantic, Council Bluffs, and in Omaha. We have an office up in Sioux Falls, and then 2 down in Missouri, in Maryville and St. Joe. Part of what we'd like to do, and part of what happens, we're a relatively large firm with 200 people. We have some company resources, a little more than maybe some other firms do, and I'd like to highlight those just a little bit. One of them is the SUDA specs, the statewide urban design and specifications. We've been involved in that since the start. It started in central Iowa. It started with about 5 or 6 communities, and in the metro area, the idea was to come up with specifications that would be consistent from one city to the other, so that the contractors would know what to build, how to build it, and develop some economy of scale. If everybody's building the same thing, hopefully they'd all save some money. But it grew from that to a group of about 17 communities in central Iowa. And at that stage, the specs developed a little bit further, and then ultimately they licensed Iowa State University to do a statewide specification. Right now, Iowa State University and the DOT handle or do most of the upgrades, or at least the financing of the SUDA specs. We're still involved with our company. We still do most of the research, or quite a bit of the research, on new products. We help write the specifications for it. We do almost all of their drawings for the standard specifications. So we're still heavily involved in it. The other item that we've got here as far as company resources that we get involved in is we've got folks that have done a bunch of publications for the Federal Highway Administration, for the National Concrete Paving Technology Center, and also for Iowa State University. So we've got some resources here that we like to draw on, and it's available for everybody within our company. So we've got some expertise. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tim.
I'm actually from Atlantic, head up the Atlantic office. That's where Dave and I are from. I recognize Gary. I was here on a project 10 years ago, and I don't know if Jim, we don't know, I think maybe he was here also, but in our office we have 15 employees. We can do anything that, like our other branch offices. We have our engineering staff, surveyors, all the CAD technicians. We can provide all of the all of the activities needed to do a project out of our office. What Al alluded to is we have this 200 people that we have resources. If we run into something or need some opinions or advice, we have all these folks that we can tap into their expertise as well. But being full service, we have experienced project inspectors all the way through. Just wanted to show you a little bit. Yeah, we're in Atlantic, so we're not the closest folks here, but you can see that our current clients, we kind of surround you. We're doing a lot of work in Ida Grove right now. Completed the streetscape over at Lakeview. So we've been up in your area and are going to continue to be up in your neighborhood in the future. So it gives you an idea of some of the clients we've been working with in the past. I want Dave maybe go through some of the kind of street experience that you're anticipating. So,
like they said, I'll be the project engineer on this project. So I just kind of wanted to give you guys a feel for my background and experience with streets and other infrastructure-related projects. And I just listed a few up here. We've got the Lakeview Streetscape and Boulders Drive that we did. Ida Grove, we did Moorhead Avenue. 22nd Street in Atlantic. The Avoca Streetscape. And then we did Walnut Street in Walnut and Walnut Street in Oakland. Those are just a few of my last projects that I've done. And they're more than just street projects. For instance, Lakeview Streetscape was all new downtown streets, sidewalks. It also included new water systems, services into each building, whole new storm sewer system for the community. Same way with like the Avoca Streetscape, for instance. That was all new sanitary sewer. So we do take a look at the whole street project itself and the infrastructure underneath, make sure everything underneath is good before we actually go over and pave a new street over the top. So just wanted to let you know I do have the experience with street work and infrastructure projects. And as far as special assessments, as a company, we have done several over the last few years. Ankeny, Anamosa, and Atlantic, and we do have Sac City. I believe in 2001, we did Aaron Street special assessment here, and Tim was the project manager for that. And I think he would talk a little bit more about that project in particular.
Okay. Yeah, quite a list there. This was just an area that I printed off actually the assessment schedule, final assessment schedule that we did for Aaron Street. So I was actually the one that conducted the public hearings here at City Hall with the property owners. We had several of those meetings. Gary probably remembers those. Actually went pretty well. North Fifth was in cooperation with the county, and so we worked with those folks to cost share, and but the project went really well. And it's funny because I was looking at, I have the copy, I don't know why I kept this, but when we did the interview for that project some 10 years ago, we had a flip chart, and I was looking at the personnel that were listed on the flip chart, and 4 of the original people that worked on North Fifth and Aaron's are still with us doing surveying, doing CAD design work and so forth, and design. Nick Kaufman's still with us, so a lot of the folks that worked on that, even the inspector is still with us today. So so we feel especially qualified as far as in your community. And I don't know that you've done any assessments since that project on street projects. Did you? So we were probably the last ones that were involved in your project. So I just want to go through real briefly the process. I don't know how familiar you are with it, but again, this is the Iowa Code section that provides for allowing cities to do assessment for a portion of the project payable over a 10-year period with interest. Our role is to come up with the estimated costs, do the assessment plats on the parcels that are benefited. We do the assessment schedules on those spreadsheets with taxable valuations and the improvements for each lot, and then we do the construction plans and specifications. Your role is even more extensive. You have to approve these schedules. So you you have to really truly understand the spreadsheets that we put together. So we have to really have that communication so that you folks understand what these schedules are saying and how we're coming up with the formulas and how we're providing those assessments for each individual property. Because you folks will be sitting here at the public meetings, and we're going to need to address what the citizenry has to say about these assessments. We're here right beside you to work with you and answer questions and get you all through that process. You probably understand this, but going through an assessment process adds a lot of time. You're getting started early, which is good. You know it's going to take time to get through it. Again, this lists out your initial meetings. We've got resolutions, preliminary plans and specs. You have public hearings on the assessments, your adoption of your resolution of necessity, and then you get finally to your final assessments, and after the project's completed, that all gets filed. Again, I don't want to bore you with all that, but it is quite a process. We've been through it a number of times, and we're confident we can lead you through it as well. I'm going to go back to Dave and let him talk a little bit about specifically the project approach.
The project approach that we would take on this project is, once an engineer has been selected, we thought we would sit down with the group, committee, whoever you guys have selected to be in charge of this project, and try to refine the project approach, what streets we want to do, what we all want to include the project, basically the overall scope. Look at causes of pavement failures that you may have if you have poor subgrades, if you have storm sewers that may be leaking, causing pavement failures, that type of thing. Look at the corrective actions and pavement repairs that need to be done. We've done several street assessment reports for different cities, City of Atlantic, City of Avoca, where we go through and look at all their street systems. So we do have a lot of experience with that. And then we will also help you guys with these public information meetings, meet with the public, let them know the street project that we're going to do, the extent of it, and basically just let the council and the entire public know what's happening in their communities. The schedule for this project, we're looking at preliminary design in the summer of 2011, with preliminary assessment schedules done by the fall of 2011. Final design in this winter, and then bid letting early part of 2012. Looking at a construction time frame for next summer, next fall.
Mike, give a little background where you're from.
I'm very familiar with this area. I actually went to high school in Lakeview. So I'm from Auburn area. So it's kind of a special project, you know, like with doing the Lakeview streetscape. It was neat for me to do that, and I like to come back to the area and help out the local communities that I'm familiar with. So.
With that, to wrap up a little bit here, one of the things that we've done for the size of our firm and the multiple offices, we can kind of pick and choose the team that we want to work on a particular project, and we actually selected the team. We selected the folks from Atlantic to do this particular project. We believe it's the best fit. They certainly have the experience, and we certainly have the expertise and experience within the firm. Again, the experience, extensive experience in the work, the expertise. We're publishing documents. We do understand the paving process and the repair process for paving. We've got the right project team and commitment. We're here. We want to do the project for you. We want to continue our work with the city. We've enjoyed working with you over the past year and a half here, and we'd like to continue on another project with you folks.
I might add that Gary knows this, but I served on Atlantic Council for a number of years, and then actually Barb, I was mayor in Atlantic for a number of years. I wasn't quite as gray back then. I was quite a bit younger, but so I've had an opportunity to be on your side of the table as well, so kind of know the appreciation for having folks that are confident in what they do and capable in what they do to lead you through some of this. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there. So that's really our presentation.
Council, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I got a couple.
Okay.
On that one slide you had, you listed keep going back. Right, whoa.
Yep.
There was one right there. Then/adopt resolution of necessity 3/4. What is that?
It takes 3/4 to actually adopt that. It takes 3/4 of the council to adopt the resolution of necessity, and when you start adding up the numbers, pretty soon it almost turns into a unanimous decision to adopt it. Yeah.
And you mentioned something about time of completion.
Yeah.
You, I think, specifically said, well, when do you think it's going to be done? Can you have this done by the fall of 2012?
I think it's possible. I think we need to determine the scope of the project and see what we're looking at for size of a project. I mean, it's definitely, we can get through the assessments and the design and have it under construction next summer for sure.
Yeah, the schedule that we presented in the handout really looked at a letting early next year in March or February, which typically we get our best prices early in the year of letting it. And there's certainly enough time next year to build it if we can get through the assessment process and funding and everything this year.
Could you give me an example of, say we got a street right here, it's bad. You're going to have to replace, tell me what you do to build that street. Just what actually do you recommend for replacing that street that you're standing on right there?
Okay, every street is a little different. If it's completely bad, you know, a lot of times we do a complete reconstruction with a concrete street.
That's what I'm talking, a complete reconstruction.
Complete reconstruction, okay. Basically, we go in, we would start with our topographic survey, get the survey of the area, see if we need any additional storm sewer. We would take a look at the underground, see if the sanitary sewer water main need improvements. And if that stuff is good, then we would go into basically a street design project, look at the grades. Are the grades okay elevation-wise? Does it need to go down? Does it need to go up? Again, drainage, how to get that water onto the street for better drainage so we don't get that water in the subgrade. We would do a lot of subgrade preparation during construction.
Which includes what?
Basically disking it up about 12 inches. If the subgrade is really bad, there's treatment options, chemical treatment options. You can do lime-treated subgrades, fly ash. There's treatment options for the subgrade if it's really bad. Yeah, you can do geogrid fabric with rock.
But you normally just pour right on top of it.
Yes, most of our streets, I guess, in what we do is mostly, of course, on a prepared subgrade where you disc it up, compact it, dry it out, pack it in, get the good compaction, and then pour right on top of the grade.
One thing we do, we add an extra inch typically. We pour 7 inch rather than 6. I don't know what you typically see, but a lot of communities do 6-inch streets, but we'll go 7.
Is there any consideration given to good drainage of water, let's say on the subgrade, in order, you know, to minimize the heaving and so on, you know, the freeze-thaw process throughout the winter? Is there anything that can be done to minimize that, or that you frequently do?
For instance, 22nd Street in Atlantic, right now we're doing a granular sub-base beneath the pavement with sub-drains along the shoulders because we just had a really wet subgrade there. And so what that does is it collects the water before it gets into that subgrade and freezes and thaws and does all that frost heaving. So there are treatment options you can do with sub-drains, being one of them.
If it's a real concern, we'll seek the advice of a geotechnical firm to analyze exactly the soils. There are times when soils won't allow moisture to migrate, so the tile lines may not be that effective for intercepting groundwater. It depends on soil conditions. So,
is that whole issue of importance in order to, you know, get a good, long-lasting product at the end?
Moisture is a big concern. Yes.
I think subgrade is like a house foundation. It's only as good as what's underneath it. So, unless you're going to go to all the extra expense for geogrid, 12 inches of granular, extra pavement thickness that you're going to bridge over the top of. I mean, you can pave on swamps if you want to prepare it appropriately, but the thing I think we're good at is, with our experience, is we've done enough streets in enough different conditions in a number of geographical areas that we're pretty good at evaluating what should be done to give you a pavement that will perform for a long period of time. We did the highway through Atlantic in 1993, and we ground up the old pavement, put it down as base, have subdrain. That pavement section looks almost as good today as it did the day we poured it. But you know, it's a matter of doing the right things. You don't always, you know, you still may have isolated problems. It just happens. We all know concrete cracks, and But we do the things we know we should do to control that cracking, to define where it's going to crack.
You can share the cost there. There isn't much else out there that we found and that we've been able to find for our communities. Most of the streets that we see are locally funded.
Through either geo-bonding, local option sales tax, revenues. The other thing is, David just mentioned, we probably did 6 paving jobs in the last 4 months. So we have a really good handle on the market right now, the cost of doing street work, which means we can do a pretty good job of estimating what projects are going to cost. So you in the planning stage can figure out how many blocks you can afford to do, because we have some really pretty good numbers right now. And incidentally, we're seeing that those numbers are still very competitive, at least for right now.
Have you done, you know, in a lot of these street projects, are most of them special assessment, or some of them, tell me your mix.
You guys are different, because historically, in the sense that historically you've done special assessment on street projects. And that's been my understanding 10 years ago. That's why there wasn't a lot of opposition, because that's how things were done here. Now you take these other communities that are doing street projects using road use tax money or geo-bond or using their sales tax money and letting the whole citizenry pay for it. And then you decide, well, let's just do 2 blocks and we'll do a special assessment. I mean, they scream bloody murder, because you fixed all these other streets and charged everybody, and now you want me to pay for the street? So that's the difference you have. So we do, I would say, I'll bet 10% of the projects are special assessments, in fact. It's not that widely accepted in the areas that we serve.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. And we see the same thing in the central Iowa area, about the same thing. There may be, it depends upon the community, depending upon what their experience has been, but it's well less than half. It's probably less than 25% that were actually special assessed.
It got brought up in Atlantic just the other, when they were going to do this $2 million street project, and one of the council members said, well, why don't we look at special assessments? And that got reported in the paper. I mean, that's all what got said, and I mean to tell you, the phone started ringing and calling City Hall saying, what's this about special assessments? And people got pretty upset in a hurry. But again, your community has utilized that method of funding street projects for as long, as 10 years ago, and Gary before that, that's how it was done. Gary Mahana was the city administrator at the time, and he had that history also with him, and that's how it was done.
And part of it is the reasonableness of how much you're assessing, how much you're sharing, or how much the city's paying versus how much is being assessed. If it's a reasonable share cost, then typically it's a lot easier to sell to the public.
Yeah, you understand that special assessments doesn't mean that property owners pay for 100% of the project. Right. You've got to have, either through geo funds or cash balances on hand, or like I said, local options, you have to have another source to pay for those things. So that the real crutch of a special assessment is understanding how much project you're going to do from the beginning, and having a very precise idea of the cost of that, because you're putting preliminary schedules together on what those assessments are going to be for those folks. And those are all based on preliminary cost numbers. And it isn't until the final, after you get the bids in and you actually do the project, that you certify to the final schedule of assessments that's filed with the courthouse.
You mentioned before that you bid out 6 other street projects in the last 4 months. One of my areas that I asked during the first process, and I'll ask again during this process, Are there any concerns about time commitment to this project and being available and when necessary?
Oh, on our part? None. We're not the dog and pony show. Well, maybe we're the worker guys. So it's us that's going to be at your meetings. And it isn't going to be us telling you how good we are and then we send somebody up to sit in on a meeting. It's us. So we're here because we can be committed to your project and we have the ability to do it. In that schedule, we can do it.
We have the resources and the time.
Now, what Al alluded to is if for some reason something happens, we got so busy, and we needed some help on other projects.
We can still pull from other
We pull from other offices. We've got video conferencing through our TV that all of our offices can communicate live through TV, and so we're on the same drive. Our files are on the same file system in all the offices. So.
And I've been through a significant number of special assessments too in street projects.
Yeah.
So
if something would come up that we're scratching our heads a little bit, we've got folks to talk. Kathleen Connor just, in fact, another gal in our ranking office, she just gave a presentation to the whole company about special assessments and some of the things she ran into recently. So, yeah.
What about green aspects to this project? You see any opportunity on green aspects of this project?
We talked a little about that. Actually, my background's landscape architecture, so I'm familiar with rain gardens and a lot of these issues. I think there's a possibility. I think I think the reality is that I don't think people understand the trade-offs with some of that green. There's a lot of maintenance. There's a lot of upkeep.
Like permeable pavement, for instance.
Yeah.
It's an option.
With
a lot easier in the new development as well as opposed to going to the old development.
Yeah. And, if you're doing these rain gardens or bioswales, they look pretty nice when you first put them in, but unless you've got somebody dedicated to take the trash out of them, cut the weeds out of them, and keep them cleaned up, they become almost an eyesore, and when money's tight, to pay someone to maintain those, because you can't rely on the property owners to just take them on. You would hope they would, but so I like the concept, but I think you have to be careful in the application of it. And that's more my.
Quite a few of the streets are really repair projects on some of the streets, so there's not really a good opportunity to take a whole street and do something with it, because it is patching. Part of it's patching. Part of it's determining why it needs patching, fixing that.
But driving the street is a lot like storm sewer. I mean, we see a big issue with storm sewer, and I think that's been related, and how to deal with that. And I mean, that's the things. Those are heartburn to property owners when they got water shooting up over the curb and coming into their yards or whatever. I mean, those are the kind of things we see, and failed pavements that are really, really rough or get a lot of potholes in them, or just, those kind of things. So, a final comment on that would be, unless you're unusually different from the rest of the communities, you don't have a lot of extra money laying around. And you have to make sure you can do the most you can for every dollar you have. And that what you do is going to last and perform, because you don't have the money to redo it again. And again, I think it's important that the evaluation of your streets and determining the priorities of your streets and what you're really going to do with them, and that's based on how much traffic's on certain streets and the speed of that traffic and some of those issues, it all plays in. And that's the important part, I think.
Do you do everything in concrete then, or do you do any asphalt overlay?
We do both. Yep.
I mean, North Fifth, when we did that, and I don't assume that North Fifth hasn't been anything done with the asphalt in those 10 years. That was a concrete curb and gutter with an asphalt in between. And we did base work on that prior to it, and we drove it, looks pretty good out there for
10 years.
10 years. With the truck traffic you're getting on that stretch. There was comments about the Highway 20 redoing, and that North 5th is going to be a major entrance to the community. You know, that gets me a little excited because I do a lot of the streetscape work in these towns, and the idea of enhancing that corridor would be, you know, a fun project to be involved in. So I don't know if that's part of your thing. But time's up.
Thank you
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would I do me out, but if I could leave you with copies of just...
Oh, gosh, yes.
Sure. Yes. There you go. It's up to you.
Green.
No, it said as long as it's not flashing.
Oh.
Is what it said. It said if it's not flashing or if it's not green.
Thought about it, I forgot. Oh, you can sit up here for the last one.
I didn't drink it. Two of you are done, and
Good to see you. Good to see you. You look familiar too. Have you been around for a long time?
Yeah.
Forever.
I read you.
yeah.
You know, lost your hair.
Yes, that's all right. I get Bob's back.
But, well, there's one here. Thank you. There's a chair over here.
Yeah, good.
You'll sit and say,
Here we got everything. Thanks, folks.
see you later.
See ya. Take care, guys.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Get some hair. Here.
That's it, trick.
Hi, John.
Alright, guys.
Good.
Oh, I think that's right. Oh, he went. All right. Security? All these guys, yeah.
This one's going. We're actually everything out over here. You don't use that for a room, if you use it for business, because anybody else is here. Years ago, this one. Milo was here. But this whole wall was different too. Milo was basically yeah, no. Say, I was thinking Milo's. Yeah, let's put him against the wall. It doesn't make sense. We can't go on that whole Judas out. Are you? Well, I don't think this one's here. Okay. One door over there. Slow down, she the wind was pushing me down the road.
Oh, yeah, it's just a few little brands.
Yeah.
Couple bigger ones.
If you need to borrow John, we'll rent him out to you for a while.
Nah, we'll be all right.
Almost ready.
Probably the end before you leave when you leave. So, I think we're ready, Adam.
Yeah,
go right ahead. Okay, thanks everybody for the opportunity to talk to the City of Sac City about your street improvement project. After being notified that we were selected for an interview, we did visit with Adam a little bit to try to identify a focus for our discussion tonight. After that discussion and talking internally a little bit, we've kind of come upon two objectives for us tonight. We know that we need for the city to get comfortable with who JEO is, both who I am, who Jerry is, and who the firm is in general. That'll be one of our objectives. The other objective is to teach what unique benefits we feel JEO has to offer the City of Sac City for your street improvement project. My name is George Paris, branch manager for JEO's Carroll office, senior vice president, sit on the board of directors. Jerry Ripley works in our client development department, deals with a lot of things as they relate to communicating and public improvement projects. But with that, unless you want to know much more about Jerry or I personally, we're going to roll right on into this and keep going. We want you to be comfortable with who we are, who I am. I'm going to be your primary contact, your project manager for the project. Three unique benefits that we feel JEO can offer the City of Sac City for your project. From our perspective, the engineering part of this is easy. We know that there will be some challenges along the way, but relatively speaking, we feel the engineering part of this will be easy. Our culture is one of a teach and learn environment. It's an educational environment. We want you, whether it's the city staff, the city council, the constituents, we want everybody to educate us on what is important to you about the project. We're going to ask questions so we have a firm understanding before we get a good running start on your project. So we're ready to go, and we can develop a project that will develop consensus not only with city staff, the council and mayor, but also with your constituents. That is our end result. We want a project that's supported by everybody. We've got 120 people in 9 offices, different expertise. We've got transportation engineers, we've got sewer and water engineers, we have electrical engineers, we've got water resource engineers. We have different expertise in all those 9 offices. Our focus, our primary type of client is communities like Sac City. We don't do any work for the city of Des Moines. We know that working for communities like Sac City is different than working for a community like Des Moines. Case in point, city of Des Moines, typically if you're working with them, you're going to be working with an engineering staff. Whereas if we're working for a community like Sac City, we understand we're going to be working for a staff and a public works director, city administrator, mayor, and council. And we operate differently, and we fully understand that. At any given time, we're probably working for roughly 100 different clients like Sac City, and we have multiple projects going on. At any one time, we probably have 1,000 projects that are open. Not all of them are active, of course, but so we fully understand and fully expect to have a lot of direct communication back and forth, especially from the city staff. We've done a lot of work. We began in 2007 with your street study. And since that time, Jerry and I have spent a lot of time the last 12 to 18 months roughly, we've spent some additional time refreshing what we see with the particular streets that have been prioritized by the city. We know that we didn't know those priorities a year ago, but we still we kept in touch with Adam to see that the project was coming. And since the RFP came out and we submitted our written statement of qualifications, we spent additional time researching the streets. In my mind, the one thing I wanted to see is what happened between the study in 2007 and the inventory we took at that time, and what happened after the winter of 2009, 2010. Because in my mind, that winter was just brutal. We spent that time, and we did see some changes in different streets. And why have we spent all this time? Okay, we're prepared to talk about a lot of different things tonight. We're not necessarily going to touch on all those boards. But why have we spent all that time? Because in our opinion, we care. And we treat every single client the same. We spend a lot of time, we communicate a lot to make sure that we fully understand the project from conception through construction. Okay, I want to go back to teach and learn a little bit. Following my notes here. Here's what we would expect going through the teach and learn. We call it teach and learn, that's our culture. You might want to call it an educational process. We expect to ask a lot of questions of city staff, to get a lot of feedback from city staff. And then we hope they're also going to ask a lot of questions of us. And we're going to be able to provide technical input and non-technical input. Council and mayor. From a council and mayor perspective, we're assuming that there's going to be a certain type of preference. What is that preference? Is that preference going to be Portland cement concrete? Is that preference going to be asphalt resurfacing? We don't know, but we need to understand that so we can help determine what a solution or alternative is for your particular street. The public. We've identified in the scope of work in the written submittal as to what we anticipate needs to be done for public improvement, or public input, excuse me. And from a public input process, the things that we think the public generally wants to know is, okay, how is my trash pickup going to be accomplished? How am I going to get to my driveway on a daily basis? How is the post office going to deliver my mail? And what we do, we gain an understanding of all this, okay? Then we take all that information that we've gleaned from city staff, council and mayor, and the public, and then we prepare that and put that information in a set what we call contract documents, plans and specs for many of you. And we deliver that message in the contract documents to the contractors. Okay, so they're going to see what the certain special needs are, might be of Elm Avenue, providing access, might be of Gishweiler, for maintaining access all the time, especially for the Army Reserve Station. We'll deliver that message to the contractor in the contract documents. We'll deliver that message again in the pre-construction conference, and then we're going to continue at the progress meetings to deliver that message to the contractors to make sure that all the needs that are met are identified in the planning process from the beginning to the end. I personally have a little bit different perspective than we think some engineers may have. I've sat in Bob and Adam's chairs. I was a county engineer for a while. So I get the political, social, economic side of it, the importance of making sure that everybody's informed and communicate to on a regular basis. What we wanted to show you here is this is where I sit in our organizational structure. These are all the people that work for JEO. On average, it's around 120 to 130 people. I've got the clout to demand resources if we need them for any particular situation. So if Adam would come to me and say that we need an accelerated project schedule, because of where I sit in the organizational structure, I can add a design team if we need to speed things up. If we have a special need in we call it environmental, Might be sewer water. We have a special need there for some reason. Because when we're talking about your projects, what I call complete streets, we want to make sure that we consider water, sewer, and storm sewer, and everything involved with your project. But this is just, we consider Sac City a sweet spot for the type of clients that we work for. So we wanted to make sure that you're aware that as a board of director, we consider this a very important client and a very important project for us. Now, with that being said, we've got all these other boards that we're prepared to talk about. If you've got a different subject, we're ready to go into Q&A. If you've got a specific item that you see on those boards that you want to talk about, we're ready to talk about it. But otherwise...
Can you talk a little bit about your experience with special assessment projects?
You bet. You bet. We all know that with special assessments, the state statutes, the code drives special assessments. So what we do with special assessments is we've actually got a spreadsheet set up, and I should have brought a spreadsheet, but I didn't. We've got a spreadsheet based on what the section of the state statute require. Parcel ID, parcel number, valuation, and then the calculations that need to be made to determine the special benefit to each individual property. What we use as our method of special assessment calculation, we use Flint formula. I'm guessing everybody uses the same formula. To tell you where this came from, what I can tell you the history of it is, it goes back to 1919, and I believe was established by the Iowa Engineering Society. I think they gleaned the formula from Flint, Michigan, or something that they did back then. But as far as my understanding, I've asked a lot of questions to the Engineering Society with the state of Iowa. They can't give me an answer of where the formula comes from. All I know is it goes back to 1919. And what I know is that all the projects we've done and the public works staff we've worked with, we always use that formula. Okay. Generally, if you have a rectangular type block, the general rule is you go halfway to the, when you're determining your district, you have the lots that abut the street you're working on, and then generally you go halfway to the next street. So if you've got a block and you've got an alley, you go to the alley, you determine your special assessment district. Now, the way the Flint formula works, just because you do not have a lot that butts up against the street doesn't mean you won't get assessed. And when we determine those districts, when we educate ourselves exactly to what your expectation is, we'll determine at that time if that's how you want your special assessment district boundaries to work. We go halfway to the next street. Okay, I believe that the city of Sac City has typically used assessment to finance their projects in the past. Do you know, is that the method that you've used in the past, or have you used a different method? If you've got to use a different method, then we would just follow whatever method has been consistent with your projects in the past.
No, that's how we used it in the past.
Okay. But that's what I understand about special assessments. But the state, in my mind, the Code of Iowa drives it. There's one item in there that varies by jurisdiction on how we get to the valuation of the parcel. Okay, I believe the code says that the council will establish a committee of 3 to determine parcel valuations. Some communities don't have us do that. What they have us do is to go to, in that particular case, the last one we did was in Carroll. They had us go to the county GIS information on the web, and we pulled all that information down, those particular valuations, and populated our spreadsheet with that information. But it depends on how you want to handle it. We'll do it however you want. But generally, in my mind, the code specific, you'll establish a committee and then you'll determine those valuations. I don't know if that answered your question, Adam, or not.
Yes.
Do you do a lot of special assessments?
No. No, but we've done a lot of work for the city of Carroll. They've actually got a most of their improvements are done from their LOST, their local option sales tax. We've done the last one we actually did was for the city of Carroll, but that project never got built. We went through the whole design process for Mile Road. Went through all the special assessment calculations, which really can't happen until you're at the end of design because you don't know all the costs involved with it. And the constituents said no, the project was more than they wanted to handle because it was actually a petition, a quasi-petition that came from the constituents to the city. Then when they determined how much that project was going to cost and how much the assessments were going to be, they decided not to do the project. So, but most of the stuff we're doing is either locally funded or, in this case, LOST money. Seems like geofinancing is pretty popular too.
You don't see much grants used in
Yeah, unless you've got a federal aid route, you know, that's, you got to have a federal aid extension to really see those types of funds, the federal aid funds. Unfortunately, when it comes to street improvement work, there's just not a lot of opportunity besides geo, local, LOST, or special assessments to identify special benefit.
As far as time commitment goes, you mentioned that you might have in the upwards of maybe 1,000 different projects, active or non-active, that are ongoing.
We don't have anything on our plate that would affect this schedule right now. But remember, when we have those open projects, that's throughout the Midwest, through our offices and different places. But what I can tell you is we have one department that's fairly busy right now that won't really affect this project. Our transportation department doesn't have anything that should really impact this project in my mind. Depends on when you get started and what the scope of the project actually looks like. Our sewer and water guys are quite busy right now. But the part of that's due to flooding. And we've got our sewer and water guys are doing a lot of work along the Missouri right now. Got some emergency calls. November 1 of 2012 roughly. It really depends to me on what you end up deciding to do as far as rehabilitation or reconstruction solutions. Because when I spent, both Jerry and I spent a lot of time looking at your streets, it's evident to me, I guess my assumption is your preferred solution is Portland cement concrete based on the newer work that I've seen. If you're going to go through a reconstruction process, in my mind, what would impact that based on the amount of streets that you have on your map? How much of this other stuff down here, water main, sanitary sewer, and storm sewer, are you going to do if you're going to go through what we sometimes call a remodel job or a reconstruction job? If you're going to do a lot of that in conjunction with your street work, if you're going to do a reconstruction, then I'm not sure. If it's all going to be reconstruction, if you're going to do a bunch of resurfacing, curb and gutter replacement, driveway replacement, I see no problem with that. To me, with the reconstruction work, the biggest issue is if we set on with a bunch of rain like we're starting to see right now, you could get into a week or two of time that the contractor might not be able to do any work. But in general, I would say no. But if you're going to do a lot of reconstruction, you'll probably take most of that construction season. What we want to make sure, and we do, is that we phase the work, that we don't leave any of your constituents left to deal with a mess through the winter. Your phone will be ringing off the hook, and we don't want that. We want to avoid all those issues. That's why we spend a lot of time asking questions in our educational process.
Can you give me an example of, say you want to do a reconstruction? Is it dirt, ground up concrete underneath? Do you use...
as far as the base goes,
yeah, do you use...
excellent question, Nick.
A drainage system under there too to keep the water out, or what do you do?
we're going to rely on these guys here to answer some of the initial questions. CTS is a geotechnical firm that we've added to our project team. Jim Birch is the engineer. But what we would plan to do is we would ask CTS to go take some soil borings if it works within your budget and your development process. Jim will usually tell us 5 foot deep, roughly, on a soil boring maybe. Usually doesn't go over 10 feet, but generally what Jim will do, they'll take enough soil, he'll look at the street, and let's say a block on Leonard, he might want to take 2 borings per block. Okay. And what that'll tell us what's there today. That's going to tell us what the soils are, what the, if we've got asphalt overlaying concrete, full depth asphalt or whatever. But we're going to rely on them in our initial investigation to give us a recommendation. But in general, when we're doing a reconstruction project, the ones we're doing in Carroll, we're only getting into foundation rock or sub-base if we run into unsuitable soils. Okay. If we don't run into unsuitable soils, then generally most of our new paving has been 7 inches on raw grade, 7 inches of PC concrete. That's been their solution. But if we identify a situation, you may not be able to find, even though you take 2 borings per block, you still may miss something in the middle, and you may end up with unsuitable soil. Then we'll deal with it at construction, and then you're going to want to put in some sort of rock. Generally, they call it special backfill. And if it's really unsuitable soil, then we can roll out some engineering fabric to support that soft area. Generally, if you're not really uniform in that entire block, you're probably going to run into a situation where you might have some differential movement where your rock ends, if that makes any sense. If you put a 100 foot of rock sub-base and then you get beyond that, you may have some cracking there. But it's best, if it works in your budget, it's best to put in sub-base. Foundation drains, if you've got the storm sewer to connect to, then if you listen to the geotechnical firms, they'll tell you to run sub-drain on both sides, and then the other advantage of sub-drains is you can connect sump pits. Yep. Yeah, exactly. So that's the best. It really comes down to, how's it fit in your budget.
Which kind of leads into one of my questions. On page 4 of your proposal, you have construction replacement, and then you have a second alternative, which was construction mill and or overlay, which was considerably less. Is the mill and overlay kind of based on what you just said, with the subgrade and so on? Is that even a consideration? I noticed that in almost all the situations on our proposed street renovation, the cost of the mill and overlay is quite considerably less, but is it even really a consideration, as far as effectiveness is concerned? Yeah,
we want to look at this as an alternative. In a lot of your cases, if I look at Platt, Leonard, Bowery, South 6th, a lot of your streets, we're going to look at that as an opportunity, but then we're going to ask Jim Birch to tell us, what's the condition of the existing concrete that we'd be overlaying over, or resurfacing over.
That we can't currently see.
That you can't see. One thing we've learned, we did an overlay project in a small town in southern Iowa 3 years ago. And one thing we learned, if we look at this one here, I won't go completely away from your question. I want to address, if you look in your streets, you can see a defined crack over a joint at the curb and gutter section. One thing we learned with that community, they just wanted us to go in and mill and overlay. Well, once we got this curb and gutter section milled off, we found that the curb and gutter section was all rotten. After looking at it with the city and the contractor, the city said it's just so rotten we got to remove it. So they had a large change order to replace curb and gutter. So we want to make sure that we do as much investigation as possible with the geotechnical firm. What we did in this table, understanding that at the time we did your study, that was when Jeff Fegenschuh worked for the city. Our approach with that was a little bit different. And since that time, we had 5 years, basically 4 or 5 years of different data, additional data. What we did is, the city of Carroll does so much mill and overlay that we went back in to those projects and looked at what the cost had been to the city for those projects. I was amazed to find out pretty consistently $40 to $50 per square yard for those mill and overlay projects. That includes curb and gutter repair, sidewalk enhancements, driveway improvements, resurfacing, which was generally 2 to 3 inches, milling the old 2 to 3 inches deep, full depth patching, fixture adjustments, manholes, valves. And then we recently took bids on a new project in the city of Rita. Now that's a little bit different project. It's not a remodel, that's new. But we wanted to see what the cost was to do everything for that project. That was about 100, I say 90, but roughly $100 a square yard. So roughly full reconstruction versus mill and overlay, it's about twice as much. So the main reason we looked at that was to get some sort of idea early on in the project what you might think about as to how many streets you can do, what can you afford. You know, if your budget is $600,000 or $800,000, this might help you zero in on some numbers early on in your project. If you want to do a lot more projects, a lot more blocks, then you may want to go this route. If your preference is Portland cement concrete with a good subbase underneath it, then you're probably going to want to go this route. With a mill and overlay route, we will probably look at a design life of 10 to 12 years, I would estimate. The design life for a new street, design life, we will say 20 years, but in reality it's probably going to last 30 to 40 years. But engineers will tell you a typical design life is 20 years. And then what we can do is we can do a life cycle cost analysis. Let's say we're going to mill and overlay every 10 years. Okay? So we go 10, 10, 10. We're going to have to spend this amount 3 times if you look at present value. If you look at a PCC concrete job lasting 30 years, then we're going to do this cost once. So if you looked at spending that 3 times versus spending that once, then if you do a life cycle, theoretically, the concrete's less. This is going to have, a reconstruction job is going to have some maintenance. It's going to have crack repair, full depth patching, or something over that life. And we would estimate that too. But what we do when we're estimating cost per project is just based on our most recent projects, actual low bids that we receive.
But some of this will be determined by the street itself, because some of them will not even be, you won't be capable to do that overlay. You'll
Yep.
have to do
You're exactly
else.
right.
So
Yep.
some of this isn't a choice.
Yep.
It's a matter of fact.
Yep. We would just ask or recommend that if you're going to do really any job, we would just recommend that you do your due diligence and look at the water, sewer, and storm sewer. You might be able to get by with slip lining your sanitary, but we would think before you put a new concrete street on top of those utilities, you want to investigate them a little bit, because they'll ask cost you to do some repair to them. But you're right, Mayor. You're exactly right.
What about traffic? Does that have any bearing on whether you're going to go?
Type of improvement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You hardly get, you'll never see a lot of traffic on it.
Yeah, if you're just looking at basic residential traffic, then we probably wouldn't treat anything special. Now, if you've got a block that has a lot of truck traffic, that would be tractor trailer traffic. we would want to know that. But in the streets that I believe are on your list, the only streets I envision would have a lot of truck traffic might be Park. Elm probably doesn't.
I was not so much truck traffic, but just the amount of people that live in that area, the vehicle traffic itself, you know.
Yeah, when you design the structure part of a paving surface, they call them easels, equivalent 18,000 pound axle loads. That's how many 18,000 pound axle loads. That's really the life of a project. It's not 20, 30. It's how many years does it take to get to that number. So if you don't have a lot of that type of loading, then I don't know that we treat them any different than we generally would. The thinner an asphalt overlay, the faster the joints and cracks are going to reflect.
Okay, it's time for questions.
We good?
No, that's
No,
all there.
is that it?
We're done?
We're done? Okay. I thought you told me
Can I
first.
run one more by? How unique is your geotechnical services, that division that you have there? How unique is that to, let's say, engineering firms in the area? Or is that somewhat unique to you, or is that pretty much a standard practice?
They are a sub-consultant to us on this project. We don't have any true geotechnical firm, geotechnical engineers on staff. He's a sub-consultant. CTS, they've become our stormwater for this project.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. We good?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you for the
Appreciate it
time.
very much.
Please notice that the ranking form in your packets, I ask that you have them in by the end of the day tomorrow. Give you an opportunity to review, and I'll report them at the next meeting so we can begin the process of negotiating with the applicant.
Okay. No, we need to move on to 6C, consideration of accepting Laura Murray's resignation from the park board. That letter is in your packet.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Call for a vote.
Councilman Brenning.
Yes.
Councilman Frederick.
Aye.
Councilman Crowhart.
Yes.
Councilman Hanson.
Yes.
Okay.
6D, consideration of approving Earl Hardesty to the library board. Bill serves on that board. If you have any questions about that, you can ask him.
We have received a recommendation from the library board.
I would make a motion to approve.
Call for a vote.
Thank you, Jim.
Yes, it was Jim.
Councilman Brenning.
Yes.
Councilman Frederick.
Yes.
Councilman Crowhart.
Yes.
Councilman Hanson.
Yes.
Okay, 6E is consideration of hiring Jesse Prudence and Jessica Osborne as pool subs. Adam, do you have anything to add to that?
Just filling out our roster a little bit more with some substitute opportunities.
Okay.
Move to approve hiring of Jesse Prudence and Jessica Osborne as pool subs.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Would you call for a vote?
Councilman Brenning.
Yes.
Councilman Frederick.
Yes.
Councilman Crowhart.
Yes.
Councilman Hanson.
Yes.
Thank you. Item number 7 is public input on solid waste matters.
Tomorrow night's meeting.
Okay, we'll move on to council forum, item 8. And I think most of that is listed in here, unless Adam has some additions to that. It's written in there.
Yeah, just basically just a notice of things that will be coming at you at the next council meeting on June 27th.
We had a Kids World Board meeting tonight. Their fundraiser, their night out at the golf course is this Friday, and starts at 6. Tickets are $10 at some meal, and then there's a silent auction. So know about that.
What night again is that?
It's Friday night, 17.
6
And
o'clock.
6 o'clock at the golf course. And it will be catered by the HUD.
By the hub?
By the HUD. See what else. Might been to a lot of meetings, can't remember. Anybody else have anything to report?
Also move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call for vote.
Councilman Brennan.
Yes.
Councilman Frederick.
Yes.
Councilman Frohart.
Yes.
Councilman Hanson.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Everyone.